Good morning, all. Welcome to the meeting of the Falkirk Planning Committee being held in Grangemouth Community Education Unit 69 to 71 Abbots Road, Grangemouth, on Wednesday, 11th of March at 10 a.m. This meeting will be conducted both online and in person in accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government Scotland Act. At this meeting will be live streamed on YouTube at www.falkirk.gov.uk/live. I'm the convener of the committee, Councillor Ralph Kelly of Ward 3, Denny and Banknock, and the other members of the committee will introduce themselves. First, the members in the room. Bailey.
Bailey James, Chair, the Planning Committee.
Councillor Gordon Forrest, Planning Committee.
Provost Robert Bissett, Member of the Planning Committee.
Councillor Ian Sinclair, Deputy Convener of the Planning Committee.
Thank you. And councillors online, Bailey Buchanan. No here. Okay. Yes, Councillor Bowes.
Hopefully you can hear me. Councillor Gary Bowes, Member of the Planning Committee.
Good. And Councillor Murtha.
Councillor Laura Martin, Member of the Planning Committee, and apologies, convener, for the second time in a week. I've been called to the school on a committee morning, but I'm now on my way back and will be joining the committee formally very shortly, but I'll keep my camera off. Apologies to committee members for that.
Thank you. And the final councillor.
Hello.
That's it. Okay, Bailey.
I can't hear.
Can't hear. A wee problem.
You there?
You can hear me,
Yep,
Billy.
yep. Councillor Anslow, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, convener. I'm Councillor Anslow and Veterans Champion for Ward 4. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right on the right hand side, where about?
Councillor Bowes.
Yes,
Right,
convener.
I'm on the right hand corner.
You can hear me all right, eh?
I can hear you, no problem.
Right. We'll just have a short.
I can hear you, Billy, as well.
Okay, if we could have a short recess just to sort out the technical problem with Bailey Buchanan.
Okay, say something about audio muted.
So what to mute it?
And yeah, I can hear you, Billy, fine.
Hello? Right. Keep it that way. Right.
Get up to help Billy. Yeah. Okay. Billy Buchanan, can you hear us? Billy Buchanan? Doesn't seem to. Just carry on. Okay. Okay, then we'll just carry on. There's obviously a problem at Billy Buchanan's side of the tech. Officers in the room are. Can you start with Brian? Introduce you.
Yeah, so it's Ryan McDonough, Planning Officer, that's happy to take you through the first application today. So
No, that's just it. We just move on. Just the introductions.
Yep, Kevin Brown, Planning Officer, Development Management.
Bernard Whittle, Development Management Coordinator.
Hi, Jim.
Richard Broadley, Senior Planning Manager, Falkirk Council.
Convener Ian Henderson, Legal Services Manager.
And on my left,
Arlene Fraser, Committee Services Officer.
Gemma MacArthur, Committee Services Officer.
Jim Miller, Committee Services Team Leader.
okay, thank you. And we have other officers online for support if needed. So to the business of the meeting, first agenda item 1 is apologies. Have we any apologies?
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies submitted by Councillors Colley and Flynn. Thank you.
Thank you. Second item, declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. If we move on to item 3, the minute of the last meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 11th of February 2026. Are there any questions regarding this minute? No? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Can we agree the minute? Thank you. Good. We move on to the first member. The first item 4 of the agenda, which is a P/25/9492/FUL, which is an extension to dwelling house at Torrenmore, 41 Common Drive, Olliston, for a Mrs. Katrina Hamilton. It's on page 13 to 22 of your agenda. We've had a site visit on Monday, the 9th of February 2026 to this site. And we have a deputation request from Mrs. Katrina Hamilton and Mr. Barry Sturrock, agent. Is the committee happy to hear the deputation? Thank you. Planning Officer Ryan McDonough will present the report. Ryan. Sorry. Billy,
Thanks, convener. Regarding, I missed the declarations of interest. I have no declarations of interest, but I'd just like to put on record why I wasn't at the site visit. My plane was delayed, so I couldn't go. I didn't call things in if I didn't go to the sites, convener, and I apologise for that. I did go yesterday on my own to see both sites. The site going up to California, I'm very aware because I lived there for a while. Common Drive, I knew, but I didn't know where the houses were to see the visible aspect. So I'm quite happy to continue in the meeting. Just to make that clear, thank you.
Thanks for that, and obviously it's something that couldn't be helped. Sorry, Ms. McDonough.
Thanks, convener. So, as you'll be aware, members will have already read the report, so I don't intend to go through it in any great detail. As we've just discussed, members also attended an unaccompanied site visit on Monday morning. So I appreciate the context of its site in relationship to neighbouring properties. If so desired, I've also got a collection of site photographs available for members if they wish to see them. So if Gemma is able to share the existing composite drawing for this application first, that would be beneficial. So the application site is located at 41 Combe Drive within a built-up and established residential area in Wollaston. As members will recall, the residential estate is made up of a variety of property styles. The donor property relative to this application is a two-storey detached dwelling house with an existing dormer extension on the southern elevation. The proposal before members today is for the removal of that dormer extension and the construction of a larger roof extension in order to create additional living accommodation. So as members can see, obviously that's the existing dwelling house and the existing dormer. That's fine, Gemma. If you can just share the other drawing for the proposed now, that would be great. So the proposed extension would have high letterbox windows on the side elevation facing into the gable wall of the neighbouring property. It should be noted that the existing dormer has windows that face onto the same elevation, and there are no windows within the gable end of the neighbouring property. Furthermore, windows are also proposed on the front and rear elevations of the proposed roof extension. So in terms of planning consultations, due to the small scale of development proposed, it was not considered appropriate or necessary to consult any internal or external bodies. So representations, though, as with all applications for planning permission, statutory neighbour notification was carried out for this application as detailed in section 6 of your committee report. 3 letters of objection to the application were received. You will note, however, that the 3 objections all come from the same address. The points of representation have been addressed at section 7b.8 to 7b.12 of your report. As members will be aware, planning applications are required to be assessed against a development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Owing to the scale of development proposed, unlike larger applications which usually go before committee, the assessment for this really just focuses on 2 main policies. So Policy 16, Quality Homes of NPF 4, and Policy HC08, Residential Extensions and Alterations of our Local Development Plan 2 are of relevance. The policy assessment can be detailed at section 7A of the committee report. So Supplementary Guidance Note SGO3 is also of relevance. And the assessment against the relevant policies contained within are detailed at section 7b.1 to 7b.7 of your report. So in summary, policy 16 of NPF 4 states that householder development proposals will only be supported where they do not have a detrimental impact on the character or environmental quality of the home and the surrounding area in terms of size, design and materials. So in this instance, it is not considered that the scale, design and appearance of the extension would be out of keeping with the character of the surrounding area. The proposal is not considered to have a significant adverse impact on neighbouring properties in terms of privacy, overshadowing or any physical impacts. So in conclusion, convener, the proposal is considered an acceptable form of development as it complies with Policy 16 of National Planning Framework 4 and Local Plan Policy HC08. There are no material considerations in this instance which would warrant refusal of the application. It is therefore recommended that Planning Committee grant planning permission for the reasons as outlined in section 9.1 of the report. Thanks, convener, and I'm happy to take any questions that members might have.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions for the officer? Billy Buchanan. Sorry, Billy Kerr.
Thanks, convener. Can I just ask, Plan Officer, with regards to the distance between each home, is there a certain distance there needs to be regarding for overlooking?
So thanks, Bailey Kerr. So in terms of our supplementary guidance note, there is standards in terms of overlooking. It really depends on the difference between angles. However, that standard is in relation to habitable room windows. So in terms of any garden ground that might be impacted, and that's really the reasons for the objections from neighbours. There is no minimum standard in terms of garden ground. But in terms of window-to-window distances, there are standards that apply within SGO3, and it really depends on the angle between windows. On this occasion here, there is no windows within neighbouring properties that would fall foul of those guidelines, and the main concerns from neighbours really source around garden ground. However, that's not applicable in terms of the policy.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned the overshadowing aspect of the properties either side. Is it the number 39 and the one next door going up the side street? So I see in the report that a survey was done between December and June. Is that correct?
Yes, Bailey Kerr. So in terms of overshadowing, within our supplementary guidance note, there is reference to a British Research Establishment document on site planning for daylight and sunlighting. That goes into some detail as to how overshadowing calculations can be done. The applicant's agent produced that survey, which was conducted at numerous points throughout the day. I think it was 3 points throughout the day, both in June and December, which is what the guidelines state. So the study that was produced shows the level and the extent of shadows that would be cast as a result of the development. So the study did not note any significant loss of overshadowing to any properties. It did note, as mentioned within the report, that neighbouring properties would have impact in terms of overshadowing, but that impact already exists owing to the position between properties within the built-up area. And it is not considered that the proposed extension would exacerbate that situation at all. The applicant's agent has obviously made a deputation request, and perhaps they can go into that in greater detail. And if committee were so minded, I'm happy to share the doing calculations that were done. It's a very technical assessment. It's based on established guidelines, and obviously it's up to us as officers to come to that view, and it's our view that it is acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much. So probably my next question is, when was it submitted?
I'll just check that now for you, Bailey Kerr, 2 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
It's just not loading up for me now, Bailey Care. Perhaps if you can come back to me on that one, and I can give you the answer to that if possible.
Okay. My next question is regarding when I went up yesterday from the path in between the applicant's home and 39. There is 2 windows in the elevation. One I take it as the bedroom at the front, another one with obscured glass. I take it that's the toilet. So there is a proposal to have another window at the side of the new extension for another bedroom. Could anything be done that would prevent the privacy thing? And let me make it clear, I'm all for the applicant to proceed with the extension. I wouldn't deny anybody, but I just want to make it sure it's right. And if anything can be done to help with regards to the objections, if we exhaust all the different aspects, I'll be happy with that.
So in reference to your first question, Bailey Care, so the application was validated on the 10th of November 2025. The recommendation was placed on the recommendation list within the 8-week statutory timeframe as well. So in reference to your second question, perhaps if Gemma, if you're able to share the existing drawing again, that will show us obviously what the existing situation is like. Yes, as members will have seen from the site visit, there is windows that are on the rear elevation of the existing property. So yes, you're correct. There is if you can just zoom in, Gemma, to the drawing in the one in the middle, on the bottom row. Yeah, that one there. So obviously that's the existing floor plans. So there is a bedroom at the rear. There's obviously a bathroom in the middle, and there is an existing bedroom to the far side. So there is an existing bedroom window, and there is obviously the existing bathroom window, as members will be aware. As you can imagine, the bathroom window is opaque glazing. The proposed elevations or the proposed drawing, so that shows an additional window that has been created on that rear elevation. However, it is our view that any loss of privacy as a result of that window would not be significant. It also should be noted that as a built-up residential area, no privacy is guaranteed. It should also be considered in relation to the existing site circumstances. So from within that existing property just now, you would be able to see into neighbouring garden ground from the bedroom window that already exists. You would also be able to see from neighbouring properties, rear elevations into neighbouring garden ground. And as we've already said, in terms of SGO3, there is no real protection in terms of garden ground. The protection really stems around habitable room windows, and with the window-to-window distances between this property and properties on Home Drive as well is in excess of the minimum standards.
Thank you. I maybe have a couple of questions for the applicant's agent. However, we had an application for a dormer in Shield Hill, Anderson Crescent, and the privacy thing was very pertinent in that application, and it was refused for that simple reason. And I know every application is done its own merit, but a big weight was done for the privacy for the house at the back.
I think, Bailey, we should maybe return to the actual application just now.
Well, that
I understand what you're saying there. Aye, but I think we should continue with the application as it is.
The only reason I mentioned it, convener, is the plan officer mentioned that it doesn't come into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I have that clarified then?
Mr. Henderson, too.
Thanks. Thank you, convener. I think perhaps the reason the convener has come in at this point is that there's, in terms of our standing orders, not to be discussion on the merits of the application until a deputation has been completed and removed themselves from the discussion. So I think perhaps the convener was just considering that was maybe straying into matters that would take place during the debate among members at a later point in the meeting. Okay. At this stage, it would really just be direct factual questions to the officers. Thank you. And thanks, Bailey Kerr.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Thanks, Bailey Kerr. Any other questions for the officer? Sorry, Mr. Foster, Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Thanks, convener. Ryan, I'm sure you didn't mean the way it came across to me, but when you said the list of representation, there were 3, but they were all from the one house, that sounded as if it was an irrelevance, and I'm sure you didn't mean it that way.
No, Councillor Forrester, correct. It wasn't intended in that way. Usually representations would come from a variety of addresses, and that would usually be the way that representations were received. Obviously, in this instance, rather than one representation being received, we received numerous representations, but from the same property. So it was really just tried to make members aware that the source of feeling within the local community. And obviously, there has been no other objections that have been received from any other party. But no, it wasn't meant in that way.
I didn't think for a minute it was, but it may have come across that way. And just for clarification, were all 3 objections for the exact same thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the points of representation are obviously summarised within the report, but the points of representation made were for the exact same reasons. Yeah, there wasn't real significant additional reasons of objection that were raised. The points just really expanded on other points that were previously made.
Thanks. It's just, I'm a great believer in taking representations in from everyone, and obviously there are other occasions where there are multiple from one house. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Ryan. Any other questions? Okay, if there's none, we'll move on to the deputation from Mrs. Hamilton and Mr. Sturrock. Good morning, Mr. Sturrock. Yeah, welcome. If you want to start your deputation, you'll have 10 minutes, which to deliver it.
No
Thanks
problem.
very much.
I'd like to start by acknowledging Councillor Bailey. Just you were saying you had a few questions for me, but perhaps what I'll put to you may kind of answer those questions from the beginning. So I've put together a little document that Gemma's going to kind of run through. So to begin with, we've got basic ordnance survey plan. We've got our application site in number 41. We've got 43 going up the hill, which we currently have 2 windows looking onto. 2 windows which, for the record, don't comply in terms of building standards aspects and escape and safety and things like that. So that's part of the kind of wider proposal. We obviously have number 39 shown in green there as well, which the objections have come from. And just as a reference point, we've got the pink house at number 19, which sits quite predominantly up on the hillside there, which comes back to what Ryan was saying, that Common Drive is a very, very built up area. I think in this day and age, I don't know if we would be allowed to do such things, but the nature of the beast is what we have here at the moment. Could you flick on to the next page, Gemma, please? So the photo you're looking at the moment is the view from the existing rear bedroom window of our applicant's property at number 41. As you can see, we've got clear views into their garden. This is, we can't change that. And as Ryan said, there are no windows of note. Yes, we have a small window, but I believe that's a stairwell window. So in planning terms, there's not a window-to-window impact. Ryan was talking about the kind of minimum distance, which I believe 18 metres or whatever that is. For that one. So yeah, that is our existing setup. If you could go to the next photo, please, Chairman. So this is taken from inside the property going up the hill at number 43. Now that is the view that they have looking into number 39 as well. Obviously, I can't produce a photo of what the proposal will be, but if anything, the view from 43 is there's less invasive, if that's the way to look upon it. We have this large established hedge. The window that we are proposing on the rear leans, it's actually closer to the window 43 than it is to the window on our existing property, just by nature of how the houses are kind of placed on the site. So if anything, my kind of argument to that is it worse than existing? That's kind of, we've got two big windows on the back. The new window that we're putting on the back elevation as well is in fact smaller. As I touched on as well, as a technical aspect to that in terms of escape purposes as well. The windows that are on the current dormer, they are above the regulation 1.1 metre high for escape purposes on the two windows that are there. So by placing this window here, we then tick that box in terms of building standards. Now I need to obviously keep an eye on that as well as the planning side as well for any designs that I do. So that's kind of part of the reason for having that window on the back. And again, with the views, looking out over onto that. Gemma, could you just go back to the photo before as well? The page before. So I'd already touched on at the site plan to begin with. We've got the house on the top right of the photo. So that's at number 19 as Common Drive kind of snakes up the hill. As we can see there, there's two rear it's a double sort of facaded rear elevation there. We've got two large windows on that plane, both looking down onto number 39, into the garden of our property at 41 and into 43. So it's just to kind of give you an indication of, overlooking, and that side of things is prevalent on site. So where do we stop with that? And Councillor Bailey, you'd sort of said about you wouldn't want to stand in the way of anyone developing. This is a kind of key part of the family's home. We've currently got 2 bedrooms upstairs. We're not actually increasing the amount of bedrooms, we're just increasing the size of the bedrooms. Future proofing in terms of, it's a young couple in here, future family and that side of things. So that's part of the reason for the development as well. And that kind of touches on the safety aspect going forward. And just a couple other points as well. In terms of overshadowing, Ryan I'll not go over all the kind of various sort of policy documents and things, but yeah, I produced a sort of 3D image of the overshadowing, and for the winter and summer months at various times of the day, it's negligible. I know that was a concern. There was a concern raised about the lane to the rear as well, in terms of, its impact of overshadowing, that becoming kind of damp and mossed up and whatnot. But really, I feel certainly I've identified that there's no overbearing impact in terms of overshadowing to the rear or any other property that we have there at the moment. It's just 2 seconds. Yeah, if you could just scroll through a few pages, I'll lead you on. It's the second last page of the document. It's looking up the lane as well. So maybe, just go back up a couple, please. And the next page up as well. If you show, there's two photos on that page. If you could show both of them, please. Yeah, so there we have the lane between 41 and 39. Just to the right of the photo, the top photo there, sorry, that's the bathroom window. I appreciate I've cut out the bedroom window, but we're looking onto that lane. It's already, as I touched on, without kind of going over that point again, the overshadowing to there won't be any worse, certainly in my opinion, than what we have at present. And Jim, if you could scroll to show the bottom photo as well, in terms of kind of loss of privacy. Now that lane runs up the back and, there's clear views into garden spaces. Not only that's showing number 39 there, it's the same at 41 to the other side. In terms of the overall impact of kind of, loss of privacy, there's clear views already into most gardens there. Certainly when I walked up the lane and took those photos, I didn't have to stretch, or I could see straight across fences all over. So to sort of sum up, I personally don't feel it's any worse than what's existing. I think that's my kind of underlying sort of statement on that. Happy to sort of take any questions on that as well going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Sturrock. Are there any questions to Mr. Sturrock?
Just a couple of quick ones, convener. Mr. Sturrock, see that the overshadowing thing. So one was done in December, one was done in June.
Mm-hmm.
So the June one, you don't know this prior to putting the application in?
No, am I on? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was something that was requested from the planning officer Ryan, as well as part of his overall assessment of the application. So he asked me to, as I get with certain applications as well, from drawing our 45-degree lines and all that kind of thing, this required a little bit more than that, and I certainly feel, and I think Ryan has obviously sort of agreed on that basis, that what was produced, as a request from him, doesn't impact the overall application.
Can you put that back up? Because my last question is on that. The reason I'm asking, I didn't want to make it difficult for you. I just want to be right, make sure we tick all the boxes. And as I say, I'm not against the development. With regards, just highlighting the overshadowing, if Ryan's asked for that after the application was submitted in November, how do we know what it's like in June?
It's all done online. It's a software. It's not done physically, if you know what I mean. It's actually done via software. I did it through what's called SketchUp on that, and there's a function on there that you can do it, and you can pinpoint the time of day and the month and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Ryan had touched on as well that I did it, I think it was 9 AM, midday, and around about dinner time. I can't remember exactly, but the overall impact. So I did that for the existing and for proposed. And just to sort of clarify as well, for this, I didn't feel there was going to be any of this sort of overall with this application in the grand scheme of things. So I wouldn't normally put that in as a par for the course. The existing and proposed plans have been on the screens, but if I felt I needed to, I would do it as part of it. But for this, I personally didn't feel that was required from the outset. But as we progressed through the application, that was requested, and that's quite a normal thing.
That's fine.
Certainly. So
I just wanted, because reading the report, I'm thinking, how would that be done in June? So you've answered the question. Right. My last question is, Jim, if you go up to the new proposed drawing near the bottom, and this is the reason I probably called it in. No, I think the other way, Gemma, it's the new photo. It's the architect's photo. there. So that window in the middle is the bedroom window. The new light blue window is the window that's facing into the lane. That was the reason I called it in to say, is there anything that can be done that would alleviate the privacy thing? If there's no, there's no. But is there anything to be done at the side elevation that would help? Because the back doesn't matter, because next door in 43, it's just a black wall. It has not got any windows on it, as you know. Yeah. So that was. Is there anything that can be done?
We wish to maintain that window there, as myself and Ryan have already sort of gone through, that we don't feel that there is anything worse with this window. And just to clarify, I don't know if maybe I picked you up wrong there, but just looking at the photo, so the right-hand window on the first floor is the bedroom, the middle window is the bathroom, and then, yeah, the blue indicates the proposed window for the newly extended bedroom and dormer there. Yeah. There is high-level windows on what is the side elevation, but you are literally, I don't know, 1.5 meters from the gable of the property next door. If you're doing a nice new bedroom, would you want that as your outlook? That would be my kind of counter. I have a photo on my document showing that, but yes, there's no windows on next door. There would be no overlooking issues, but it's not the bonniest, is what I would kind of sort of state it as well, looking onto the side. So certainly from myself and my client, the applicant, we would like to maintain that window on as is shown in that elevation there.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Billy. Anyone else? Any questions? No? Okay. Thanks very much, Mr. Sturrock. You can retake your seat. Yeah. We go back now to Ryan for anything he wants to mention on what's been brought up during the deputation.
Thanks, Convener. It was really just firstly, the Deputy Barry Sturrock already alluded to, but the assessment in terms of overshadowing, in terms of the BRE guidance as a technical assessment, it is not a physical assessment where applicants or agents would go out, or technical specialists would physically go out to the property in June and December to conduct that assessment. It is based on recognised guidance in terms of sun paths and computer-aided technology is what produces that guidance, and that's applicable for every application that we would ask for. As the agent has also said, it's not par for the course. It's not something that we would ask for in every application. The supplementary guidance note SGO3 does allude to the fact that if there is concerns in relation to overshadowing, officers can ask for that assessment, and that's what we've done in this instance in order to clarify to us that there wasn't going to be an overshadowing impact. And we are quite satisfied in terms of the submitted proposal and the submitted supporting documents in terms of the BRE guidance, that there isn't any significant impact. The second question that you had alluded to in terms of the windows and the concern around the overlooking impact of the proposed window in the rear elevation, we would only suggest that there was windows that were removed if in our professional opinion that there was a concern around any loss of privacy. It would not be appropriate for us to put a planning condition or anything like that onto an application if we were not concerned that it didn't comply with policy. In this instance here, we're satisfied that it does comply with policy. We're satisfied in terms of our development plan and our national planning framework for and supplementary guidance SGO3 that privacy situations does not take into account gardening grounds. It fully focuses on habitable rooms. Habitable rooms are, for example, kitchen spaces, not necessarily open plan kitchen spaces, living spaces, things like that, rooms that you're in a significant amount of the time. There isn't any privacy impact as a result of that. There is only obviously one window on the gable elevation of the neighbouring property to the rear, and that is a staircase from, so it appears. So yeah, we're satisfied that the proposal does comply with relevant guidance. That's obviously why the recommendation is to approve planning permission. In our view, it would not be appropriate to request that any windows were removed, because we are of the view that they comply with the relevant guidelines.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any further questions to Ryan? No? Okay, then we'll open this up to members for discussion on the application now. Is there anyone wishes to add anything? No? Okay, then we'll go straight to the recommendation, which is the sorry. Oh, Bailey Buchanan, sorry.
Can you hear me okay, convener?
Yes, thank you.
Fine, thank you. I've been listening intently to the discussion, and obviously I was party with the site visit, and to be honest with you, I don't see any problem here, and I would at this time formally move the recommendation.
There's a couple of other, I think Councillor Murtagh wishes to say something before we actually go to make the decision. Councillor Murtagh.
Actually, convener, I was similar to Bailey Buchanan in that having looked at the details of the case and heard what has been said today, I also would have been happy to move the Aquifer's recommendation. So if Bailey Buchanan is doing so, I'm happy to second.
Okay, so anyone else? No. So the officer's recommendation is that the committee grant planning permission for the reasons at 9.1 on page 18 and 19. Happy to read out if anybody wants me to. No, good. Is anyone of a contrary position? No. So we're happy to agree the officer's recommendation.
Agreed.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, do you want? Okay. Right here.
Agreed, convener, but just to clarify, it's no Councillor Bailey. Councillor Kerr, but Bailey's added. Bailey's your
title.
Yes.
Not your name. Okay, then, if we move on now to item 5, P/24/0117/FUL, construction of 6 dwelling houses at land to the northwest of Leaside, California Road, Shield Hill, for Mr. Grant Heaps. We had a site visit to this on Monday the 9th and followed up by Bailey Kerr's own site visit to it. We also have a deputation request from Mr. Gill, the agent for Mr. Heaps. Are we happy to hear Mr. Gill?
Great.
Great, thank you. Officer Kevin Brown will present the report.
Thank you, convener. As you said, this is a detailed application for the construction of 6 detached 2-storey dwelling houses within the countryside at land to the northwest of Leaside, California Road, Shield Hill. Gemma, if you wouldn't mind, could you bring up the proposed site plan, please? Thank you. That's great. Members will see from the site plan that the proposal includes the formation of a new vehicular access to the site from California Road and the construction of a suds pond. I should also highlight to committee that I don't know if you can see it there very clearly, but there's a blue line around the northern portion of the site, around the northern portion of those gardens. Yeah, you can see it better there. This depicts a large retention structure ranging in height between 7 metres and 12 metres along the length of the site boundary there. Gemma, I wonder if you could also show the proposed section drawing, please. Thank you. Could you zoom in towards the bottom left of the drawing? Yeah, thank you. You can see on this drawing that the existing and proposed ground levels for the site are shown by the green and the yellow lines respectively on these section drawings. The existing land on the site slopes away quite severely to the north, and its existing landform towards the Bowman Burn, which runs along the northern boundary of the site. And you can see here the proposed retaining wall that's shown on the left of each of these drawings. Thanks, Gemma. The responses to consultation on this application are summarised in section 4 of today's report. Members will see from this that there remain some outstanding matters in relation to roads layout, flooding and drainage matters, a number of which have arisen due to a series of design changes being made to the proposals without the updating of the initially submitted flood risk assessment and drainage impact assessments being completed in full. We've received 3 letters of representation to the proposal, which are summarised in section 6 and addressed in 7B1 of today's report. And the policy assessment is set out within section 7 of today's report. You will see that the officers are of the view that the proposal is contrary to the development plan, which has resulted in 5 refusal reasons set out within the officer recommendation. These refusal reasons focus on 3 key themes. Firstly, that the site is located outside of the settlement boundary and within the countryside. The proposal doesn't meet any of the qualifying criteria within the development plan, which would support new housing growth in this location and therefore represents unjustifiable and unsustainable growth in the countryside. Secondly, the various amendments submitted over the course of the application have resulted in certain design and layout changes, which have not then been supported by updated flooding and drainage assessments, which have been assessed in full. Issues around flooding and drainage therefore haven't been fully bottomed out as of yet. And lastly, the scale and positioning of the proposed retaining wall and levels changes is such that we have significant concerns with respect to visual impact, biodiversity levels and flood resilience. The officer's recommendation in this instance is for committee to refuse planning permission for the reasons set out within section 9.1. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions to the officer? Erika?
Thanks, Convener. With regards to the last statement there, Kevin, the visual aspect of the retaining wall, who would see that retaining wall? Because there's a field at the north. So who would be impacted by that visual aspect?
Thanks, Billy Kerr. Yeah, I mean, you would be able to see the retention structure from the public road on California Road as well, where it crosses the Bowman Burn. And the properties from the north and from the west would be able to see it from the rear windows. I would say that would also be concerned about the potential precedent that could set, and in terms of making it more difficult for us to resist further applications for levels changes so close to the burn corridor and such substantial levels changes on sites going forward.
I understand what you're saying. I think that, as stated many occasions, every application is on their own merit. You go to others. I'll give this a bit for the debate. Okay. My next question is with regards to with regards to the the retaining wall. Is there could be different aspects of how the retaining wall could be done. If it was passed, could that not be done through a condition?
I'm not really sure what you're asking there, Bailey Kerr, in terms of the detail of the finishing materials, that sort of thing.
Yes.
That sort of aspect.
Yes.
Could be conditioned. I mean, what you're unlikely to be able to do with a retention structure of that scale is to hide it. Essentially, it's a substantial size, and even with planting or so on around about the base of it, these sorts of things, it would be difficult to hide it. Essentially,
I've seen structures that's twice the size of that been hidden. However, I take your point on board. With regards to, it says on the report on page 28 that policy 17 or 7A.13 with regards to is not acceptable form of infill development. I would think that between the cottage and, well, the two cottages either side, if it was to pass, that could be construed as an infill site. So how do you not think it is an infill site if there's properties either side of it?
Yeah, I mean, infill development is covered within our supplementary guidance, and there's various aspects where you could look at from site characteristics as to whether or not it would amount to an infill opportunity. It's quite clear that there's no property on the eastern side of the site, so it's further up the hill, essentially further around the corner towards California before you find another residential property. So we don't have the instance where this is a gap site, irrespective of whether it was an 80-metre gap site, which is set out within the terms of the guidance. It has a form of development which is akin to ribbon development along the roadside. It doesn't represent a natural rounding off of a settlement in terms of filling in a particular corner or within a grouping of buildings, for instance, that sort of thing. So it doesn't meet the guidance in terms of an infill opportunity.
Thanks, Kevin. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you, Billy Kerr. Any other questions for Mr. Brown? Mr. Forrest, Councillor Forrest.
Oh, thank you. I thought you demoted me.
Or maybe.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions. Kevin, it's all very well putting down 7 to 12 metres, right? What is that in real terms? I mean, how tall is 12 metres, at its highest point?
But my apologies. The 12 metres is in the region of 39 feet.
So, two-storey house, how high is that?
A two-storey house to the eaves level of the house would normally be around about 5 metres. So you're talking twice that, essentially, and a little bit more.
It's a fair size of a wall. Is there sufficient room to maintain it from the eastern side? Because as far as I could see, it was just a burn.
The construction method and the subsequent maintenance of the structure itself isn't a material planning consideration. That would be one for the developer to consider whether or not it was workable ultimately, and achievable, and whether or not there was any maintenance burden being placed on the potential future owners of those properties and that sort of thing. Where you'll see some reference within the report to maintenance is more to do with the burn corridor itself. And the concerns that we have in respect of that are twofold. One is that the retaining wall would sever ultimately any potential biodiversity habitat along the burn corridor itself. but also that it would prevent any realistic and achievable access being available for maintenance of the burn corridor, removing blockages, these sorts of things if they did occur, which could have a knock-on impact for, as I say, flood resilience in the area.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? No? Okay, then we'll now go to hear from from Mr. Gill, the agent for the applicant. Morning, Mr. Gill. Nice to see you again. And you've been here before, so you know the structure. You've got 10 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here in support of the proposal for the construction of 6 dwelling houses on the land to the north, west of Leaside on California Road. From the outset, I would like to emphasise that we believe this is a small-scale development of only 6 homes, located adjacent to existing residential properties along California Road. The intention has been to create a modest and well-considered development that integrates with existing pattern of housing in the area while making efficient use of the site. Throughout the process, we have worked constructively with the officer and consultees and have sought to respond positively to issues that were raised during the assessment of the application. It's important to recognise that the majority of consultees have not objected to the development. Scottish Water have confirmed that they have no objection. The Environmental Protection has raised no objection subject to standard conditions. The Mining Remediation Authority also raised no objection subject to further investigation through the normal planning condition process. In addition, the Road Development Unit has confirmed that the proposed access position and visibility are acceptable, and the report confirms that the road safety and traffic impacts are not determining factors in the assessment of the application. These points demonstrate that the development is technically capable of being delivered safely and without unacceptable impacts on the surrounding infrastructure. The matters raised in the report are primarily related to 3 areas: the final road layout of the site, the drainage documentation, and design of the retaining wall associated with the site levels. In our views, these are matters of detailed design rather than fundamental constraints, and they are the type of issue that are commonly addressed through planning conditions. Firstly, in relation to the internal road layout, the latest road design is fully prepared by a qualified civil engineer with experience in residential developments of this type, and believe it has been designed to the relevant guidance. The latest layout incorporates a combination of adoptable road specification together with sections of private shared driveway. This is a common approach for developments of this scale and allows an appropriate layout for the site. The Roads Development Unit has confirmed that the main access for California Road and the required visibility displays are acceptable. The comments in the report relate primarily to detailed elements such as footpath widths and position of traffic can be measured within the site. These are matters that can readily be addressed through final road design and could easily be secured through a planning condition requiring the final road layout to be agreed prior to the development. Secondly, I would like to address the issue of drainage. The flood risk assessment and drainage impact assessment were submitted as part of the application. During the application process, the layout of the site has been revised in response to the planning officer's comments, and at the time those revisions were made, we did not appreciate that the drainage documentation would need to be formally updated to reflect the revised layout. We recognise this point has been raised in the report. However, the drainage strategy itself remains viable and capable of being implemented on site. We've been entirely willing to provide an updated drainage report that reflects the revised layout and addresses the points raised by the roads and flooding team. Again, this is a technical matter that can be addressed through planning condition, requiring a finalised drainage strategy to be approved before the development begins. Finally, we would like to touch on the levels across the site and the retaining wall proposed along the northern boundary. The site has natural changes in levels. Some engineering works are therefore necessary in order to create suitable building platforms. The retaining wall forms part of the strategy and has been designed to safely manage those levels. However, we recognise that the officers raised concerns regarding its design and appearance. We remain entirely willing to continue working with the officers to refine the detailed design of the retaining wall if required. This is another matter that could be addressed through planning condition, requiring detailed design and finish of the retaining structure to be agreed prior to construction. Overall, the application is considered as a whole. The proposal represents a modest development of 6 houses adjacent to existing residential properties. The access arrangements are acceptable. Consultees have raised no fundamental objections, and the remaining matters identified in the report relate primarily to detailed technical matters that can be reasonably be addressed through planning conditions. Planning permission is often granted subject to conditions in order to secure final details of the development, and we believe the approach would be appropriate in this instance. In summary, the proposals are small in scale, sits along existing housing, has an acceptable access arrangement, raises no fundamental objections from key consultees, involves matters that are capable of being resolved through planning conditions. For those reasons, we respectfully ask that the committee give favourable consideration to the application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Do we have any questions to Mr. Gill? Who's your signalist?
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Mr. Gill. I just want to touch on the last kind of sentence that you said there, that this development sits alongside existing housing. My assumption with that statement is that you mean the housing at the village limit of Shield Hill to the north. Would that be?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Sitting alongside it, in my opinion, wouldn't mean a house sitting 12 metres above the next house. So how does that sit with sitting alongside existing housing?
The 12 metres, just to be clear, is at the northern side of the boundary, but it sits alongside housing to the west. So there's not housing along there, and then it's a 12-metre kind of wall, and then there's housing up here. That's not what the design is. The 12 metres is at the back of the site.
So but there's a boundary wall right along that edge of the site, though.
Yeah, the northern part. Yeah, the furthest part away from the road.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Convener.
Right. Barry Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Just a couple of questions. In your statement, Mr. Gill, that you said you had dialogue with officers or the officer. How much dialogue did you have with the officer?
I feel like the dialogue is extensive. You'll notice that the application was validated almost 2 years ago. I think Kevin's been really helpful and open and engaging in this process. We had, I think, 1 or 2 Zoom meetings to discuss the proposal, and a number of telephone calls, and I think each time we have responded to the concerns raised, to the point where we believe the final kind of issue was the retaining wall. The applicant and I felt that could be conditioned to detail the final kind of design of that. So that's why we had asked Kevin to kind of proceed with his kind of determination of the application.
Okay. How many reports were required?
So, with number of reports, include a topographical survey, a ground investigation report, flood risk assessment, drainage impact assessment, road traffic survey, an ecology and the biodiversity report, and the input of a civil engineer. So,
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question, Mr. Gill, because you're the agent, architect. How much would that have cost?
We tendered for this, so I do have a number actually. It's well in excess of £10,000 just for the reports, not including civil engineering input, not including application fees, not including our fees for the number of revisions that were required.
Okay, problem. That's a lot of money.
I would say over £20,000 in the end.
Right, okay.
Can I just bring Mr. Broadley at this point?
Just for members' benefit, Bailey Kerr, the line of question regarding fees that the applicants incurred, that wouldn't be material to members' decision making today.
Thank you.
Probably my last question, Mr. Gill, with regards to the land itself, what else will it ever be used for?
This is obviously purely my opinion. I think it's ideal for residential development. I couldn't see out with it just being left as a blank site. I couldn't see anything else you could possibly do with that. And that was a discussion we had with the applicant when he first came to us with the site. He didn't come to us saying, right, I want to put this many houses on here. It was, right, what can I do with this? And we obviously went through the process of different proposals and came to the decision that dwelling houses were obviously the path we wanted to go down, essentially.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Billy Kerr. Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, convener. Whilst I don't have any concerns with the number of housing, the entrance and what have you itself, I do find myself concerned with the northern retention wall. I'm concerned that we see an updated flood risk assessment, and I'm also concerned about the biodiversity. Just to give a very quick context, as you know, I have a railway background and I'm used to the constraints that the railway work under biodiversity, such as putting, if you're going to block off parts of the Pullman, the railway would be instructed to put a drain, that sort of thing. I'm just wondering, has the applicant considered things like this with regards to the local wildlife?
Mr. Gill.
The ecology report that we had undertaken said there was no kind of any signs of any protective species on the site. It did also include some provisional recommendations for biodiversity on the site. However, pending a final kind of design, I guess more detailed biodiversity improvements could be included by the people that undertook the report. And again, I feel like that's something that could be conditioned.
Thank you, Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
Councillor Forrest.
Right, thanks, Mr. Gill. I visited the site on Monday with the rest of my colleagues, and I was actually quite gobsmacked. The retaining wall, 12 metres high, and that would take it up level. How many cubic metres of infill is that going to take?
I don't have that memorised. However, the civil engineer's report does include the land cut and fill, essentially, that's required for that.
Yeah, it's a huge amount, because I think we're all aware of these big white bags that your neighbours get to fill in their driveways, etc. And those are a tonne, and they're roughly a metre square. And this site runs about 120 metres. I mean, it's going to be a heck of a lot. Any idea how long it would take just to infill so that work could start?
We're not at a position that's obviously something that we've scheduled in. However, I feel like filling in your ton bag for your driveway this is going to be a different scale, different machinery.
Obviously.
So,
you know, I'm just thinking about how many 20-ton trucks are going to go in and out of that road per day.
I'm not sure if that's actually a material matter.
No, it's for
well, that could obviously be part of the access is formed prior to the cut and fill. So the access has obviously been deemed accepted by the roads unit. With the visibility displays, we took a road speed survey for over the course of a week. For average speeds, we're well below the national speed limit at that point. I don't think there's any safety concern on undertaking that. And again, the fill's at the back of the site, so it is away from the public road. So as long as that the safe access is in place, I don't see that being an issue with undertaking that work.
Okay, thanks. It was just purely the amount and the amount of trucks that are going to take to fill that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have you any further questions?
No, thank you.
Anyone else? Any further questions for? So, Councillor Murtha.
Thanks, convener. I suppose following on from one of your earlier answers, in terms of the client originally coming to you and kind of asking what could be done with this bit of ground, what would be best, best designed in it. I wonder, I mean, given the recommendations in the report very clearly show that this is not meeting neither National Framework for planning policy, which I know it would have been a very new piece of guidance at maybe the point that you started, but it doesn't meet the Local Development Plan 2, or in the supplementary guidance within that in terms of what we are looking at with housing in the countryside and rural development. Can you give me some sort of indication about why you think, given that that's our starting framework for decision making at planning, why you think this is a suitable site for development in that context, given it clearly doesn't meet policy from a starting point?
I think the key challenge was the settlement boundary for us. It's sitting just outside the settlement boundary. There is a recent development to the north of our site. So California Road, our site obviously goes from Shield Hill to California. There's another kind of main thoroughfare that goes down towards Reading. Before there's a kind of a break in the housing, and we felt like our development was no different from that new development kind of going in that other direction. We just felt like the settlement boundary was not as hard as it didn't feel as hard visiting the site, considering the development that's taken place. And now I believe there's persimmons have developed over on that side of Shield Hill as well. So it felt like kind of Shield Hill was growing, and I didn't feel like it was any different from the development that's taken place recently, kind of down that road towards Reading.
Thank you. I mean, I suppose I understand what you're saying, but obviously, would you acknowledge that, obviously, as a planning committee, as has been said many times, we take each application on its merits, and you can't necessarily reflect what other decision making might have been part of those other decisions. And can you confirm that? Can you see that as it stands, and would you acknowledge that this does not meet policy, and that's clearly laid out in the report in terms of the housing in the countryside, and in terms of the NPF4 quality housing, that I know you've said, well, you feel that it should there should be mitigating factors, but can you acknowledge that that does not meet policy as things stand?
I can acknowledge it doesn't meet policy with regards to housing in the countryside, and I think it's unfair to say that I'm pointing to another development. I'm actually looking at Shield Hill kind of holistically and the growth that's happened. It's not just one other application I'm referring to. I'm referring to the overall holistic picture of what's happening in that part of the world, essentially. But yeah, I can acknowledge it. I understand it doesn't meet the policy for housing in the countryside.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions for Mr. Gill? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gill. You can take your seat.
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you. Can we go back to Mr. Brown, please?
Thank you, convener. I think there's a few points I'd like to come back in on, possible. From my notes here, one of the early points there was a discussion about conditions. There are certain number of things that we can cover by conditions if members were minded to grant this application, but I would have some concern in respect of some aspects which really strike at the heart of whether or not the site's suitable, and those elements really relating to the retaining wall itself, and whether or not that was something that was acceptable on the site. So to answer that question, there are some elements which can be covered in condition, but not everything. In terms of early engagement and number of reports that have been requested as part of the application process, as Mr. Gill says, we have had quite extensive engagement on the application between officer and applicant and agent. We responded to, when the application was validated, I wrote out to the applicants on within the first 3-4 weeks of the application being in, advising of the fundamental policy position in respect of it being within the countryside and there being no policy support for the application, and advising that, in my view, the application wasn't going anywhere in terms of potential success and should be withdrawn as a result. Notwithstanding that, I acknowledge that that isn't always the will of the applicants. So within the same correspondence, we set out there what level of information would be required if they wanted to take a detailed application all the way through to determination. And as part of that, you've heard that involved a lot of information in respect of flood risk, drainage, some work in terms of surveying the road and things like that for speeds and so on and so forth. In terms of what else the site could be used for, that's not really for as part of the assessment of this application. Ultimately, it's fundamentally it's outside of the settlement boundary within the countryside and is contrary to the development plan in that respect. And then lastly, in terms of biodiversity, yes, that is one of the areas where we did have additional submissions made by the applicant. They surveyed the site, established that there were no protected species within the site boundaries, that sort of thing. But again, the concern that I would raise there is in respect of we have a requirement within NPF 4 these days to see biodiversity enhancement taking place on site as part of each development. In this case, I feel that the proposal with the retaining wall and the location that's proposed is more of a step back than an enhancement in itself, irrespective of what additional planting and so on could be proposed as part of any development. And lastly, just to say, we have Gary McGregor on the call today as well, if there are any specific questions in respect of roads or flooding. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Are there any questions now to Mr. Brown? Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Convener. Just, I suppose, a couple of quick questions in relation to the local development plan. This is contrary to the local development plan. My assumption, therefore, is that this site is not currently within LDP2. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct, and it's not a site which has been put forward for inclusion within LDP3 either.
Right, thanks. You've just read my mind or my notebook up for my next question, so thank you. So just for clarity, that it's not a site that's been included or put forward to be included in the next iteration of the local development plan.
That's correct.
Right. Within the area that we're looking at, not obviously specific to the site, but in terms of if we're looking at Shield Hill in California holistically, to pinch a phrase, there are a couple of sites within the California area. Are either of those sites currently being developed?
There's a site just on the northern edge of California which is currently under construction, yes.
But I think that would be H23 on the LDP2. My assumption then is that H24 is not currently being developed, which is further along. I think it's Church Street in California.
I believe that's the case, yeah.
Right, okay. No further questions, Convener. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions to Mr. Brown? No. Okay, then we'll open it up to members for discussion if there is any discussions on the matter. And no. Okay. The recommendation is that the officer's recommendation is to refuse permission for the reasons at 9.1 on page 31 to 32. I'm happy to read that out if required. Sorry, Councillor Murtagh. No.
No, so happy for you to continue with this part and come in if needed.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm happy to read it out if necessary. Is anyone of a contrary position? Or do we accept Councillor Bailey, Kerr?
Councillor Bailey. Listening to the officer's responses, listening to Mr. Gill's submission, and listening to other members' questions, convener. I know this is out with local development plan, and I know it's just outside the boundary of Shield Hill. However, small developments like this, I feel, can be supported, as has done recently in an adjoining area, which wasn't in the local development plan. So I would propose that we accept the application, with it garden being a small development. The majority of consultees had no objections. Roads had no objection. They were happy with the visibility display. So with regards to policy, in policy 15, living locally, 20-minute neighbourhood, it is within walking distance of schools, shops and other amenities. I think because of the size of development, it could meet policy 16, inequality homes. With regards to the policy 22, flood risk and water management, the drainage infrastructure and flood management, I think there's I think there's one being submitted, but the applicant or the agents says that if the proposal was accepted, they would update so that they can get to a stage where if plan officers are happy. Policy 17, rural homes, and policy PE 14 in the countryside, and HCO5 housing in the countryside. I feel that it is an infill site, a gap site, because it's the edge of the boundary where the red marking is in close proximity to the cottage as you go up to California. I do take on board, and a few of the colleagues have mentioned with regards to the retaining wall, and it is a big structure. I've been involved in structures, just for an example, Gabion baskets, where after a year saw grass, and the visual aspect of that is hidden, and all you can see is grass and birds nesting in them. However, that's a personal thing. But I feel that as a condition that can be addressed.
Okay. So you're moving that we accept. We don't accept the officer's recommendation.
No.
Yeah. And do we have a seconder for? Sorry, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Bailey Kerr. I'm just looking through the discussion that you've just had, and I would maybe pick up on a couple of points that, in terms of the officer report, there would be a requirement for contributions towards education provision. I think that's covered at paragraph 4.6 of the report. So I raised that as I think it would be if there was a decision to proceed, it would be a minded to grant decision that would be subject to the conclusion of a legal agreement, whether that be by way of a Section 75 or a Section 69 agreement for education contribution towards capacity at Braes High School. And I've noted that's at a rate of £3,066.24 per house. You've noted a number of potential conditions, but I was just wanting to go through the reasons with you, which are important when committees taking a view to go against officer recommendations. And while I note that you picked up on various policy points, I think broadly I think the development plan, and particularly policy 16, has a lot of conditions that would require to be considered carefully, but I'm also mindful that decisions can be taken contrary to policy in terms of Section 25 of the Act. So I don't know, Bailey Kerr, if it should intend that the decision would be something along the lines of having considered the report, the development plan and material considerations, and having exercised planning judgment, it's agreed that the committee is minded to grant planning permission as it considers that the following considerations are material and of such significant weight as to indicate that the development plan should not be accorded priority. I've then noted that you've commented on various points. I think you've noted that the committee is satisfied as to the size, and I think in association with that, the appearance of the site and its relationship to its surroundings, and that you're satisfied in relation to the retaining wall. And I think you were suggesting that would be subject to conditions in relation to retaining wall. You noted that the proposed development would meet local living and 20-minute neighbourhood requirements. I think you noted, again, it's a small-scale development that would integrate satisfactorily with the existing nature of housing in the area and could be considered to be of the nature of an infill site. I think we would then note that permission would be subject to a legal agreement by Section 75 or 69, subject to the education contribution that I've just mentioned. And just to confirm, I think you were then noting that there would be conditions applied, and I'll try to draw these out. That there would be the usual conditions per the director. There would be conditions in relation to flood risk assessment and drainage impact assessment. There would be conditions in relation to the road footpath widths and raised table positioning. Contaminated land, I think, was covered in the report. So can I just check that that would be a specific one you would note? Biodiversity enhancement measures and treatment of the retaining wall. Does that cover off what you were considering the motion to be? Thank you, Bailey Kerr.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for the motion? No seconder.
Councillor Murtagh.
Councillor Murtagh, would you like? No. We don't have a seconder.
Sorry.
No, she shake her head. Sorry. Yeah. So Councillor Bailey Kerr has moved that motion as described by our legal rep. Is there anyone that's seconding that motion? No. Okay. And would anyone like to move the recommendation, the officer's recommendation, to refuse permission for the reasons at 9.1, page 31 to 32? Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, I would like to do that, convener, and to note that I think it is very important that the policies which are laid out within the refusal, the recommendations for refusal, are noted, and that I do agree that there can be circumstances in which we do go against the local development plan and indeed against policies as laid out in the Act. But it'd be very clear, and it's clear within the officer's recommendations that there isn't particular material consideration, and that those which are laid out in policies 16 and 17 certainly aren't met. And I think what Councillor Sinclair also asked is very significant, in that we know we need to have planned development for our settlements. This particular site is not noted neither within LDP2, but necessarily going to be proposed within LDP3, and I think that's really important that we look at a plan structure, particularly for developments which are growing, and I think that if we were to agree with contrary to the officer's recommendations today, that would put us in a very difficult position as a committee. So I feel, although I understand everybody has their opinions about what material considerations, material weight are, I respectfully disagree with some of the previous statements and would move the officer's recommendations in this respect. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I'm happy to second Councillor Murtagh here. I think the questions asked about the local development policy, I think, are crucial in these kinds of situations. But also, it's been mentioned that this is a small development, and while I agree it is a relatively small development, I think the impact of such a development on the policies is laid out, especially with relation to combating and mitigating the climate emergencies and the biodiversity emergencies that we've got going on. I think this application before us today demonstrates an unacceptable disruption to how the countryside where this is concerned, because I don't think there's any question that this is absolutely a rural location. So for those reasons, I'm content to second the Councillor Murtagh.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'll ask Mr. Henderson to summarise where we stand at the moment.
Thank you, convener. As matters sit, we have a motion by Councillor Murtagh, seconded by Councillor Sinclair, and that is to agree the officer's recommendation to refuse the application. We had a motion by Bailey Kerr that has not been seconded, and that is not a matter, as matters stand, that could be subject to a vote. So what we have is simply a motion by Councillor Murtagh, seconded by Councillor Sinclair, to refuse consent in accordance with the officer recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson. And is there anyone otherwise minded? Bailey Kerr. Just a second, please. What you want?
Thank you, convener. Although I didn't get a seconder, I'd just like it to be noted in my dissent to the proposal.
That's fine. That's fine. Is there anyone otherwise minded now? No. So we accept the recommendations. Thank you very much for your time. That closes the meeting for today. And thank you everyone for attending. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks to the chair.
Thanks, Chair.